It's time for Cats Talk Wednesday. Small town and big city joined forces. Vinny Hardy of Lynch, Kentucky, and Terry Brown of Louisville, Kentucky, team up to give you free-flowing, laid-back sports talk. Focus on Kentucky Wildcats, as well as pertinent information in the NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome in the Cats Talk Wednesday, courtesy of the BS3 Network, BS3TVLive.com. Go check us out on demand there. Roku, episodes in the archive. If you miss one of our episodes, you can go check us there. BS3TVLive.com, BS3 Network. Proud to be here on another Wednesday, a rainy Wednesday in a lot of places. This rain is really starting to pile up. Got the Hurricane Helene down there, and it's just pushing the rain up here. And it's just kind of sitting right now. Same thing. It's Mississippi way, where the Cats will be this Saturday as they play Ole Miss. 2 years ago, Kentucky was down there and should have won. So now Kentucky gets to go down there again. Got some offense going against Ohio, so hopefully that can carry over. I guess the Ole Miss team that hasn't really played anybody yet, they'll be getting their first conference game underway when Kentucky comes to town Saturday. So we'll talk about all that here in a few minutes. We got a friend of the show coming on here, Evie Van Pelt, EVP. She founded and published the Rebel Walk. We had her on 2 years ago to preview Kentucky and Ole Miss when Kentucky was going down there to Oxford the first time. So looking forward to talking with Evie again. I'm going to try to hold it down. My man TB is traveling, actually heading back to Kentucky as we speak. So going back to see mom and fam and everybody. So safe travels to TB. And we'll do our best to hold the fort down in his absence. It's funny, we would have definitely talked about this together, but TB and I both had brutal NFL weekends again in the opposite fashion. My Cowboys got blown out, lost by 3. His Niners had a comfortable lead and choked it away and lost by 3. So, this Cowboys 49ers matchup in a few weeks might not even be worth the hill of beans, as the old folks used to say, the way both of them are playing right now. But we'll see. Everything's crazy as far as the NFL is concerned. You think somebody's good and they're not, and it's just all flipped around. But we'll get back to that later on. We got our guest coming to the stage. She's in the BS3 Network Green Room. She's a friend of the show. We just talked about her a second ago. She founded the Rebel Walk. She's a publisher at the Rebel Walk. She was kind enough to join us 2 years ago. It's crazy it's been 2 years ago already. But she covers all things Ole Miss athletics. We're talking about none other than Miss Evie Van Pelt, the EVP. Look, I'm even saying her name right now, so that's progress. Evie, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me and putting up with all my crazy things that were going on today. So thank you. Thank you for having me. And I can't believe it's been a couple of years already either. My goodness, time flies. But thank you so much. It's an honor to get to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. And I apologize because I said we were going to have you on again, like for basketball season, and didn't do that. So I have to atone for that and get you back on.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully Ole Miss. I look for them to have a better season this year than they did last. So knock on wood for the Rebels.
Yeah, and just since we're already on that, what's the opinion out in town of Chris Beard, of that hire? How was everybody feeling initially? How they feel now? What's the whole?
I think initially Rebels were split just because, I mean, he had perhaps a little bit of baggage. I mean, I could say that, but, there's no denying he has been successful everywhere he's been. So I think that, there were a lot of folks that were, happy to have him and willing to give him a chance at Ole Miss. And then I think this last season, they started out really well. They struggled in SEC play, but I think they've addressed a lot of those issues. Nowadays, as we all know, man, the portal just changes everything, and you can flip a roster pretty quickly. Um, we'll get to talking about football here in just a second, but I just think that now everything seems to be, fans are just looking, they're looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, well, first of all, too, and I'm not trying to be nosy or get you to disclose too much, but I know you had a patch where you were feeling rough and going through some stuff, and then thought maybe you were past it. And I was thinking I need to reach out to Evie and talk about you coming on. And I pop on X or Twitter. I still say Twitter.
Me
And
too.
Pro Football Scoop was saying thoughts and prayers to Ole Miss Evie. I thought, oh Lord, and
I know. It's crazy. I had back in May, my younger sister, who's 10 years younger than I am, and I were out at some land of my mom's, and my mom has one of those Ranger ATV kind of things, and it wouldn't start, and it was right outside the gate of her property, and my sister was like, well, it won't start, we gotta go. And I'm like, well, we can't leave it outside the gate, like somebody could steal it. And she said, well, what do we do? And I said, we push it in there. And she hopped in the driver's seat and said, I'll steer, you push.
oh,
And yeah, that was a bad move on my part to push, because within 3 days I couldn't walk. And so what had happened was a piece of, I mean, I'm not trying to bore people, but a piece of disc material broke off in my back when I was pushing, and it traveled down and embedded in my sciatic nerve. So for 2 months, I had this piece of material, hard material, sticking in my sciatic nerve. So yeah, that was pretty brutal. Had surgery, and then all the medicines that I had to have after surgery, I started having reactions to that. And so that's why I think at that point, maybe you thought everything was okay, but then everything kind of went south again. But finally I'm back. So I'm back for SEC action. So I'm excited about that.
so you've been cleared, huh? Been cleared.
Yes. Yes, I am not on injured reserve anymore.
So we're talking about how it's been 2 years since you were on last. When you were on the first time, like you were coming back from Lubbock,
Yes.
traveling. So next time we get you on, we might actually get you on and we can see your face that goes with the voice and all that good stuff some other time. But
Yes,
yeah,
yes. Hopefully so. You just have to have me back during basketball season.
absolutely. And it'll be that time before we know it, which is just crazy.
Yes.
So as far as the game Saturday, um, you know, you guys have talked about it. Lane's talked about it. Doesn't feel the out of conference schedule has prepared him for SEC play. He's hoping practice has prepared him for SEC play more so. So y'all don't really have a good maybe feel for what you have because of the schedule, but as best you can you compare and contrast this year's team to last year's team's differences?
Yeah, I tell you what, I think, and it's funny covering Lane. I've covered a number of Ole Miss coaches, and Lane keeps it real. I mean, Lane could have said, "Oh yes, we're prepared. We've been prepared," but he basically said, "No, we've had more preparation from going up against ourselves." And you know what? Jackson Dart, when it got to be time for the opening game of the season, Jackson Dart's comment was, "I'll be so glad to go up against somebody other than our defensive line," because that's who he was facing in practice. And so to me, that brings up what I think the biggest difference is: depth on the defensive line and the offensive line. The defensive line, I think we know already what they're going to be like, because we know what Princely Umanmielen brings to the table. Walter Nolan, and then of course JJ Pegues and Jared Ivey are returning, and that's a very, very strong defensive line. There is more depth on that defensive line than Ole Miss has had since I've been covering them for over a decade. So that's a huge factor for them. I think in the past they've had really good defensive linemen, but they couldn't afford, there was a drop off. There was a definite drop off if you had to sub somebody out. Off on the offensive line, kind of the same thing. They went out and got Nate Caleppo and Julius Bulow from Washington, and I think they've proven. I mean, they're two starters. They got Diego Pounds. I think they've got. At one point during fall camp, Lane said he felt like he almost had two full offensive lines that he could just sub in wholesale. So now I don't think we're going to see that against Kentucky, because Kentucky's defense is very good, defensive line very, very good, and Lane talked about that today on the teleconference. But that, I think, to me, if I had to say the biggest difference between this year and last year, would be size and strength in the trenches on both sides of the ball.
So yeah, and as it is every single year, it's a trench league. Offensive line, defensive line, the SEC is so much more superior than other conferences, and you sink or swim.
You do. And I was there last year when Ole Miss got hammered by Georgia in Athens. And in the post-game press conference, I was sitting on the front row in front of Kiffin. And I'm not going to say he looked shell-shocked, but he just said, "We don't look like they do. We are up front on both sides of the ball. We do not look like they do." And they have like NFL looking kind of rosters, and we don't. And what he has said is, we addressed that in the portal, and that's going back to the portal and how much you can transform a roster. I mean, he said, "We may not, I don't know how we're going to play, but we're going to look really good getting off the bus." So there you go.
We're going to at least look the part. We can't
That's right. That's right.
That's for sure. And look, we got hammered in Athens last year too. So you guys were not alone in that.
Oh, but man, look how y'all played them this year. I mean, that's really impressive, and I think that's given Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding, that's given them a lot to think about, and so it's going to be interesting. But I will tell you. When is the last time, like right now, I think Ole Miss is number one in the nation in rushing defense. I can't remember a time that has been the case. So I think what's going to happen is against Kentucky, I think Kentucky's going to want to, and you would know this better, you'd be a better expert than me, but I would think Kentucky's going to want to try and run the ball and take off clock, keep the ball for a long time, not allow that explosive Ole Miss offense heretofore. And again, we don't know what they're going to be like against an SEC defense, but we just, know what we know from last year, and most everybody returned. But, keep them off the field as much as possible. And so I think it's, that's going to be really interesting to see how the Ole Miss offense, they're not going to be able to, make a lot of mistakes if Kentucky is able to hold on to the ball and have some long, sustained drives.
That's definitely what they would like to do. You've heard the talk. Limit the explosives, and of course you want to do that defensively, but you just hit it. You can do it offensively as well if you put together long drives, time consuming drives, eat the clock. So if they can do that, that will only, you know, enhance the defense, enhance what they're wanting to do defensively. Just, limit, because if you guys are what you are typically, the quick strike is there as well. You don't need a lot of plays to still light up the scoreboard. So Kentucky's definitely wanting to limit the potential of explosives as much as they can, for sure.
Right. I think Ole Miss against this last weekend against Georgia Southern. I mean, I want to say it was something crazy like, they scored in the first, 30 seconds or, something ridiculous like that. And so I just think that it's going to be interesting, if Kentucky can run the ball. I mean, I think, Vandegrift, I mean, I don't know how Wildcats feel about Vandegrift. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think, maybe he made some mistakes early on, but like Kiffin said, I think he looks like he's been getting better and better. And so, I mean, he's obviously is a good quarterback. So it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm really looking forward to this game because it's like you said initially, I don't think Ole Miss fans know exactly what they have yet. I mean, they do know what they had last year offensively, and pretty much everybody is back, minus, Quinshon Judkins, and that's a different story. But anyway, but it's just going to be interesting, to see if Kentucky can kind of try and ground it out and lengthen the game, so to speak, that way.
And it's weird. It's a similar scenario. 2 years ago we were talking about Kentucky getting Chris Rodriguez back off of suspension going into the Ole Miss game. Now
Right.
we have Chip Trayanum, the running back who transferred in from Ohio State. He's probably going to be the RB1, but he's been out all season with a broken hand. He was cleared, and if everything goes well, they're trying to work him back in this week and add more depth to the running back room. So that goes again to trying to limit the explosives. We get another running back in the stable. We've had Patterson and Wilcox, and those guys are a little bit on the smaller side. Trainum is 230, so he brings a little more size and strength. And if you can work him in, you're trying to limit Ole Miss anyway, which pretty much everybody does, especially Kentucky. So here we are again 2 years later, getting hopefully another running back in for his first action of the season against the Rebels. So it's just crazy how it's working out that way.
It really is. I hadn't even thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right. And I just, I mean, so, and Ole Miss, it's interesting. They have not, the talk around Ole Miss has been, where has Ulysses Bentley been? And he was, most people expected him to be RB1 this year. Last year, he split carries with Quinshon Judkins, but actually had a higher yard per carry average than Judkins did. And I don't know. We haven't really seen him. He's basically RB3 now on the depth chart.
Wow.
And a lot of people, including Jackson Dart, at a recent press conference, think that we'll see Ulysses Bentley at some point, and we will see him make a difference in a conference game. That's basically what Jackson said this last week. And so I don't really know. We have Henry Parrish, who's doing a great job. I mean, he's really doing a great job, but he was at Ole Miss, and then he left Ole Miss and went to Miami, and then came back to Ole Miss this year. So, I think a lot of people thought Bentley and Parrish would split carries. And so it's been kind of interesting to see Parrish. But I will tell you, he's averaging 7.5 yards per carry right now. Again, now that's been against the for non-conference teams Ole Miss has played, and not against SEC defense, certainly not against a defense of the caliber of Kentucky. So I'm really interested to see how Parrish does against Kentucky's defense.
Yeah, because the strength is the front seven. A lot of experience, a lot of length, like Lane said, a lot of strength, a lot of size, a lot of looking good walking off the bus, and of course Deion Walker. Deion Walker
Yes.
is a monster, and he's
Yes.
getting doubled and tripled, and that's a lot of other guys to kind of wreak havoc. But he's about as impactful of a defensive lineman. That's probably gonna go back to Dwayne Robertson, who went, I think, top 5 to the Jets like early 2000s to have a player of that caliber on the D line come through and do what Deion is doing. So, yeah, like you said, it'd be interesting to see what he does against Kentucky, because that, we saw what they did against Georgia. The secondary is still some questions, especially at safety and the corner opposite of Maxwell Hairston. So, yeah, the front seven is definitely the strength of the defense this year.
And isn't it funny that, that's the strength of the Ole Miss defense this year also. I think the linebackers, I think Kyrie Coleman and TJ Daughtery are very good. I think the linebackers, it's stronger than I've seen that unit in a while. The secondary, I'm just not quite sure about yet. I think that they've made some strides. If I had to pick the weakest part right now, that would probably be where it is. But definitely, it's just funny. Definitely the Rebel defensive line and the Wildcat defensive line are two very good units. And I know Coach Stoops today on the teleconference, praised Pete Golding, said he thinks he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. And that's high praise coming from a defensive guy like Mark Stoops, I think. And gonna be interesting. I really am excited about this game. Just really excited about it because, like I say, I think Kentucky has, you've been tested already and you kind of know what you have. I think Ole Miss just doesn't have isn't really quite sure. We, like we say, passed the eye test, but how are they going to stack up against a really strong SEC team?
Yeah, for sure. And for quite a while, and still yet to a degree, we aren't sure. Like Ole Miss isn't sure what they have because of the schedule. We're still trying to figure out what we have in Vandergrift, because pass protection has been a big issue. He hasn't had time to throw. He's been running for his life when he's dropping back. South Carolina's pass rush they were on him all day. A little better against Georgia, but there were still some strip sacks and things. But Georgia does that to everybody. So we're trying to get the offensive line together, pass protection wise, to give Brock time. Let's see what he can do. Can he make good decisions? So that's still a work in progress. The run blocking is doing good. We got to get the pass protection up to speed, and then we'll get a better evaluation of what Brock can do.
Right. I mean, I just think that, if I'm Ole Miss, if I'm Pete Golding, I think I stack the box and force Vandegrift to beat me. Now, that's just defensive coordinator Evie right there. I don't know. I think I'm not sure. I'd have to check, but I don't think what is his completion percentage? I don't think it's 60%, I don't think, but I'm
No.
not quite sure. So I think that's what, but again, I think the secondary is probably of that Ole Miss defense that and no offense to the secondary. I just think the defensive line and the linebackers are really, really good. And I just would have to say, if I had to pick a weakness, it would probably be the secondary. And, back to the offense, I just think that Jackson Dart and Trey Harris are so comfortable with one another and so in tune with each other right now. I think Harris has more receiving yards than I, some quarterbacks even have, thus far in the season, just on his own. And again, it's been against these four non-conference opponents, but Dart is completing like 80% of his passes. And I think, plays of 20 yards or more, I think he's over 60%. I mean, he's just right now he's kind of been in the zone. But again, he hadn't faced the pressure and the defensive front that he's going to face against Kentucky. And so I think with that Ole Miss offensive line, they've been a little banged up. They've been moving guys around, but can they push up front? I think they've been a little better in pass pro as of late, but that's going to be interesting to watch.
Yes, for sure. Vandegrift is right at 60. He's 58% right
Okay.
now. So
Okay.
trying to keep on pushing that upwards. So we'll see what happens. But as far as Jackson Dart, he was just in the infancy stages of his time the last time these two teams played. And so he's so much more comfortable. He's matured a lot. And I mean, just that natural progression of getting comfortable. Isn't that kind of what's happened with him these past couple of years?
Oh my gosh. I think just night and day, from this is his third year in Lane Kiffin's system. And that doesn't happen a lot these days, and so I think he's talked about it. I will tell you, I feel like Jackson's maturity on the field and in the system is light years from what it was. He doesn't make very many bad decisions. When he does, Kiffin tells him about it, but he's learned a lot. But I will tell you, I feel like where he has really grown is his leadership. Um, when he first got there, he was in a quarterback battle with Luke Altmaier, who was a returning player under Matt Corral. He was QB2 under Matt Corral, and I think a lot of people thought Altmaier would beat out Dart, and then of course that didn't happen. And I think so. There were a lot of things there that were going on. I'm not going to say the team was divided, but you know how it goes. I mean, when one's been there and you have alliances or whatever. So, but I think it took a minute, but Jackson, through his play, and especially I saw it last year, really grew in leadership. And I think that offense has so much confidence in him. I remember when I was won over was Tulane last year, and Ole Miss was behind Tulane in the fourth quarter, and Dart took over, and Dart was running and hurdling people. I mean, he was getting hammered, but he was going to do whatever it took. And so there was just that mentality, and nothing, fires up your offense and frankly your defense when your quarterback's out there trucking somebody, trucking a linebacker or something. So just the role that he has played as a leader. And also, you may have heard about it, but during this last off season, I think Jackson had a hand in every single transfer portal player they got.
Oh, wow.
And he was with the players when they would come to campus. Princely Uman said, I wasn't used to really talking to quarterbacks. Like, I'm on defense. We just, the quarterbacks didn't even talk to me really on my team. He said, this guy was FaceTiming me every day talking about Jackson Dart. And he just, at first he thought it was a little weird, but that's what Jackson was doing, is he was almost single-handedly recruiting, not just offensive players, but defensive players. So there's been a huge growth, on and off the field with Jackson.
So he's looking at that whole big picture.
Yes, yes, very much so. He wanted Princely and Walter Nolan really, really, really badly. So.
Now we mentioned Judkins. Of course, he's moved on to Ohio State, but was that something that y'all saw coming? Was there whispers of that, or was everybody just kind of blindsided when he did?
No, I will tell you, I think perhaps maybe the fan base as a whole probably was a little bit caught off guard. Media, you know how it goes. It's like you know some things, but you can't really
Mhm.
say them. You can't really report them. And I think Ole Miss knew, he basically had agreed. They had renegotiated. The collective had renegotiated his NIL. This is right before the Peach Bowl, and had it settled, and then he came back and wanted more, wanted to increase what had been increased. And at a certain point, it got to be where Ole Miss just said, that's it. That's, we've done all we can do. And there were a few, I'm not going to lie, a few maybe interpersonal issues with people on the team. And, I asked Lane Kiffin at SEC Media Days, not this year, but the year before, how do you, when you have one player making so much money and maybe an offensive lineman making way, 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 way less money, but yet he's up there blocking for the guy making all the money. How do you keep, it's just not human nature, to be perhaps jealous or to be whatever. And so I don't know what all the issues were, but there were some issues within the offense, perhaps. And so I think probably everybody is fine and happy with how it worked out now. Quinshawn seems really happy, and obviously he is playing for a fantastic school and a fantastic program, and I think he did really well last weekend. I know he had over 100 yards rushing, and so, again, wish him the very best. And but I don't think a lot of the media covering Ole Miss were surprised.
Okay,
So
I got you. And as far as this season, is this SEC championship game or bust? As far as the media, the fans,
Mhm.
and the coaches and players, what's the
You ask the very best questions I've ever been asked. I will tell you
oh,
that,
really?
Vinny. You do. I think that for the players and the coaches, I think it's probably SEC title game or bust.
Uh-huh.
Um, Simply because so many of them, that's what they came back for. SEC, SEC championship game and 12-team playoffs. And I mean, they're calling it the last dance. The players are calling it. You'll see hashtag last dance. And that is, homage to Michael Jordan and the Bulls, their final season when everybody knew it was going to be the final one of them all together. And so that's what they're calling it. And Ole Miss fans get a little nervous at that. They don't like Lane tweeting any last dance anything because they don't want it. It's not your last dance, Lane.
Uh-huh.
But I think, media wise, I think there are going to be a lot of people who think, with this talent of this team, all the players that came back, and the players that were added, Lane had the number one transfer portal class. So he continues to be the portal king. Just the roster that has been assembled, I think that they would be disappointed if they don't. And I think the media absolutely would jump on, you spent this much money on, NIL and you definitely, but I think definitely 12-team playoff, college football playoffs. I mean, I think Ole Miss fans will be incredibly disappointed if there's not an appearance in the playoffs.
Because the schedule lends itself to that, as far as, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you still got the SEC, but it could have had a few more heavy hitters on there. So the schedule's
Oh,
manageable and it sets up well for you.
it really does. I mean, they don't play Alabama this year and they don't play Auburn. Now, I know Auburn has all their Auburn issues going on right now, but at the end of the day, there is I think I saw somebody tweet that Hugh is the new Jimbo to Lane because Lane had no love lost for Jimbo Fisher and frequently would make comments, and I feel like Hugh agree with that person. Yeah, I don't think there's any love lost between Lane and Hugh. And so you never know those kind of weird kind of games. I mean, and Hugh is a great play caller. So I'm glad they're not playing Auburn. I'm glad they're not playing Alabama. And they do have to go to Tiger Stadium this year, but I feel like LSU is I mean, there's still LSU in Baton Rouge, so I'm definitely not saying that's a given, but I think they are a little weaker this year. They get Oklahoma in Oxford and they get Georgia in Oxford, and that's huge. Now, as y'all know, I mean, I tell you what, I think that South Carolina game in Columbia the week after y'all. I mean, I think the best thing that happened for Ole Miss is that game is been set for 2:30 and not a nighttime game. So
Yeah.
I think that will be helpful. But you're right. It's funny when I would have looked at this season before, I don't. I wouldn't have had that circled on my calendar, but I sure do now.
And we're saying the same thing because for the second time coming to Oxford, we get the 11 kickoff instead of a night game down there at Vaught Hemingway. Kentucky fans don't get to tailgate as much, but it's 11 a.m. 2 years ago and 11 a.m. this Saturday as well. So, does that impact the crowd as much? Can you tell a big difference night game versus 11 a.m.?
I think the whole vibe of the night game nowadays, when you've got the drone shows and all the fireworks and all that, that's a little different. That makes things electric. But I tell you what, Ole Miss had last weekend against Georgia Southern, believe it or not, a record attendance at Vaught Hemingway against Georgia Southern in a non-conference game. I think that will be broken by several thousand this weekend for against Kentucky. I think I just think fans are so excited to see what it is they have, and maybe they think they know what they have, but we're not exactly quite sure what we have. And so Kentucky is a great opponent. Everybody knows how tough they played Georgia, so I think fans are going to show up. I think, like I say, I wouldn't be surprised if I think the 67,000 was the record breaking. I wouldn't be surprised if they have 70,000 somehow in there. And so I think it's going to be electric. Well, is it different than a night game? Yes, but I think it's still going to be electric because it's Kentucky, and I'm not buying that point spread. I'm not buying that point spread. I'm really not. I have far more respect for Kentucky than maybe Vegas does. So
I think that South Carolina game has a lot to do with that. I do believe because it was just such a all systems failure kind of day. You couldn't get anything going, and eventually the defense, they did good most of the day, but you gave up a few.
You're tired.
Yeah, out there all day. So I think that South Carolina game probably plays a lot into the bigger point spread. But it's sure they saw what they did against Georgia, and at home past 3 times. If we could score 17 points, we beat Georgia. They scored 16, 14, and 13 the past 3 times they come to Lexington. So
that is amazing. Yeah, I mean, I was watching that last one. That was just something else. And Kirby had his hands full in that game, and maybe Kentucky kind of gave a bit of a roadmap maybe for some of the other folks. But I think you're right. I think that South Carolina game is going to prove to be kind of a one-off. I just think that's going to end up being an anomaly for Kentucky because again, they looked so good against Georgia to me. And I think that Ole Miss is going to be facing the team that played that well against Georgia. I don't think they're going to be facing the team that lost to South Carolina like that.
Right. Yeah. And so the past handful of games between these two teams, it's come down to the wire, as we know. It's been fourth quarter games. 2 years ago, the 42-41 game in Lexington. It's nail biters every time, Evie.
Oh, my gosh, I'm Jared Ivey recovered that fumble,
Mm.
The last time they played, and I'm real good friends with his mom, Tracy. I'm privileged to be her friend. And Jared got hurt against Wake Forest, hurt his ankle, didn't play last weekend, but I believe he is going to play against Kentucky. I think he wouldn't miss that game. I think he'd have to have something really, really, really bad to not. But my gosh, what a game that was, because it came down to that. I mean, that was literally the difference in the game. And so I tell you, those nail biters, I don't like those nail biters. you know they
Yeah,
make me too nervous.
yeah, something else for sure. Have you ever bumped into Archie Manning when he's come back to town, or any interactions with him over the?
Um, no, I've run into Eli like at the gas station. My daughter and I are over there like, should we try and get a selfie with Eli? Should we not? So haven't run into Archie. Certainly haven't run into Peyton. He's our Tennessee guy, right?
Mhm.
And but I will tell you, I had the pleasure of being in the press box with Lane's daddy, Monty
Oh
Kiffin,
wow.
who is just, was recently passed away and was
Mhm.
such a legend and such a nice, nice man.
Mm.
And I told him a story. My husband actually was the quarterback at A&M back in the late 70s when A&M went to Arkansas, and Monty was on the staff as a defensive coordinator. And I said, my husband actually played against you. And it was, I told him the year, and I said, an A&M lost right in the final moments. And he remembered, and he knew what A&M had even tried to do on the final, on the final play. And just such a nice guy, and let me take a picture with him. And of course, he had his world championship ring on. And
Yeah.
anyway, but just a marvelous, marvelous man. And so I think that has really impacted Lane a whole lot. And he just had his brother, Chris Kiffin, come back just within the last month to join the staff as an analyst. And he said, and Chris used to be a defensive line coach at Ole Miss back in the day before Lane was ever there.
Mm.
And so he's got a history there. But, Lane just said, I think my dad is smiling down that, the family is all together here. And so that's been meaningful. But so I haven't met Archie, but I have met Eli and I have met Monty. So
Okay, that's pretty good. Sure
yeah.
is.
And Patrick Willis, I will tell
Oh.
you. Now that one, oh my gosh, the Rebel Walk had a Peach Bowl pregame, pre-party the Friday before the Peach Bowl this last year. And this is a true story. It was totally packed, like wall to wall. And then towards the latter part, but we had the place, we had rented the place, so the place belonged to us. Well, the latter part of the night, like a whole lot of the crowd had left. It was, the party was over like an hour earlier, but there was a guy who came in with a few other people and sat at a table, and the waitress went over and said, "Sir, you're going to have to go because this is a private event." It was Patrick freaking Willis, and I went running over there. No, 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 no! He doesn't have to leave. This is Patrick Willis, and he was so wonderful. I ended up getting his cell phone number. He's like, "If you're ever in, California, let me know." And
Wow.
took a picture, and then he just so patiently took pictures with all the people who were there. So that was like day, year, decade made getting to take a picture with Patrick Willis.
Yes. That's a legend right there for sure.
Yes.
And he was y'all's SEC legend a year
Yes,
ago. Yeah.
yes, and now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, I mean, another one of those guys, like the nicest guy you would ever want to meet. And so, anyway, he does some live Instagram live videos. He gets on, pretty regularly, and I'll hop on and just say hotty toddy, and he's real sweet and will give me a shout out. And so
Yeah,
I'm just so like, oh my gosh, I don't need to meet anybody else. I know Patrick Willis.
that's
So
it. There you go.
anyway, there you go.
Well, last thing, Evie, I gotta ask you because we talked about the Egg Bowl, of course, when you were on last time, and how intense that is. We also talked about you being a Texas A&M alum, and now Texas is going to be in the SEC. So I
Ooh,
got what are you thinking about?
ooh.
Is it still going to be on Black Friday like it used to be, or is it on Saturday this year?
I think. Are you talking about the Egg Bowl or
Texas,
A&M in Texas?
yeah, Texas and A&M.
I think they're moving the Egg Bowl from Thanksgiving to Friday or Saturday. I don't remember which.
Okay.
And then, but A&M in Texas, I think, is going to be back on Thanksgiving. So I think they're going to get back to that. And I tell you what, there is nothing that A&M fans like to see less than the University of Texas number one in the nation like they are right now. And A&M, I think, is trying to find its way with, Mike Elko and a new staff. And I think he's a great guy and he'll get there, but I don't think he's there right now. And
Mhm.
so it's just really bad timing for A&M fans to see Sarkeesian have Texas up at the top, and they've got, just an embarrassment of riches at quarterback with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. I'm Manning at the University of Texas, which is very hard to stomach also. So anyway, a lot of storylines this year, definitely with Texas and OU entering the league, man.
And I've been saying it. I and you're an Aggie, so you would know more than me. But with Schlossnagle leaving y'all to go to Texas,
Mm.
the baseball series is going to be just as intense as the
Oh,
football, maybe even more so.
Oh, I think that one's going to be absolutely insane. And not only Schloss going, but he took the pitching coach, Max Weiner, with him. And I think he is arguably the best pitching coach in the country. And I think he did a remarkable job with a lot of young Aggie pitchers last year. In fact, this is interesting. Ole Miss had a pitcher, Grayson Saunier, who's entering his junior year right now. He transferred to the University of Texas. And I think largely just right now on the transfer portal, like this will be his first year with the University of Texas. And I'm actually really good friends with his mom, Jennifer, also. But I think that definitely one of the reasons was Max Weiner. And so I think Schloss being at Texas and having a really good staff there with him. And so, man, Aggies were not happy when that happened. And I don't think that they thought that would happen because, I mean, he took A&M to the finals of the College World
Yeah,
Series. And so, you don't think that they're going to leave you when they get that far. It's not like, you weren't doing well. And of course,
no,
A&M has all the money, all the resources, all the everything, $80 million worth of renovations to the baseball facilities coming. So that was a real surprise. And so I think there's some very, very hard feelings there
yeah,
on A&M's part.
absolutely. So we got a fun fall coming up, Evie, and it's here. We're right in the middle of it, so we'll see what happens Saturday and going forward, and all these rivalries, and Texas and OU in the league, and
Mm.
we're just gonna soak it all up. But I certainly appreciate you taking time to hop on here. It's always an honor to have you and talk with you and get
Oh,
your
well,
insights.
thank you for having me. And again, thank you for putting up with me just being that little circle there and not my real face. I'll have my real face on next time, I promise. And really just so blessed to get to be here with you. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate everything you do at the Rebel Walk and such good content for all things Ole Miss. And we'll enjoy another, hopefully, nail biter Saturday morning down there.
That's right. That's right. Best of luck to Kentucky, and I think it's going to be a great game. And like I say, I don't think that spread is going to be what it is, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, that's it for sure. But thank you so much and have a good rest of your evening, Evie. And we'll talk with you again. And so glad you're feeling
Okay.
better too.
Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you again.
All right. Thank you. Evie Van Pelt from the Rebel Walk, rebelwalk.com. Appreciate all the content and all the insights from that Ole Miss perspective. She was nice enough to come on a couple years ago, and like I said, she's a friend of the show now. So definitely appreciate Evie hopping on. Got to get in the message from our sponsor too before we wrap up this show. So let's go ahead and let that play, and then we'll put a bow on this episode, y'all.
You got 5 on it? With the $5 meal deal at McDonald's, you about to eat. Your choice of a tender, juicy McChicken or a hot, cheesy McDouble sandwich and a crispy 4-piece McNuggets and a small fries and a small drink for just $5.
Money.
Woo! 5 gets you more at McDonald's. Prices and participation may vary. For limited time only. With the $5 meal deal at McDonald's, 5 hits different. 5 gets you a McDouble or a McChicken and a small fry and a small drink and a 4-piece McNuggets. 5 gets you more at McDonald's. Prices and participation may vary. For limited time only.
So, gotta get that Mickey D's. Appreciate them being a sponsor on this episode. And look, if anybody is interested in advertising on the show, just holler at us or reach out to the BS3 Network. We'd be more than happy to promote your business or products on the show, as you already know. We had the UK Athletics Hall of Fame class for 2024 that was announced. We had Jasmine Camacho Quinn, John Kropp, Henrik Larson, Sydney McLaughlin, Leverone, Jody Meeks, and Corey Peters. So another stellar class all across the board, various different sports. Look what Jasmine and Sydney have done in track. And UK is a track school and can hold her own with anybody. Jody Meeks put himself in the Hall of Fame with that 54-point game against Tennessee by himself. And the fact that he was doing all that while being coached by Billy G. 2 real down years in the program. So he was still enduring all he had to endure. And, so congratulations to Jody Meeks, Corey Peters, D lineman for Coach Brooks. Played a long time with the Arizona Cardinals, Atlanta Falcons. Watched the game, the Ohio game, Saturday. Peter Burns did an interview with him on SEC Network, so it's good to see Corey back. John Kropp, administrator and coach. The softball stadium is named after him. Henry Larson in rifle. So congratulations to all of those Hall of Famers. Louisville Sports Commission also had their Hall of Fame induction, and you had Tony Delk, 00, 96 champ, and the legendary Cats Paws founder, Oscar Combs. Both of those guys from Kentucky being inducted, along with Teddy Bridgewater for Louisville, and Roy, he was at Kentucky Western. I'm blanking on the gentleman's name, but he's been there a long, long time. But if I can find it, I'll give him love too. But another great ceremony, and what Oscar Combs did in founding the Cat's Paws, an independent publication that covered team-specific recruiting games, that was just such a trendsetter, an idea. This is in 76, 77 that Oscar's doing this. The Cat's Paws comes out. Football, basketball, you get it in the mail. Still online today. Daryl Bird is running it. Aaron Gershon writes there. So the Cat's Paws is still going strong. 45th year. The basketball issue is about to be printed as we speak. So all the great work they've done, and it was all started by Oscar Combs. Already in the Journalism Hall of Fame, and now went into the Louisville Sports Commission Hall of Fame. So well-deserved honor. Congratulations to all those who were inducted. Um, Talked about it a little bit. You know, these Cowboys and 49ers, if these continues to play out this way, you'll hear Terry and I lamenting how rough it is on both fronts. Um, Baltimore did exactly what they should have done after watching what New Orleans and Alvin Kamara and Derek Carr did when they hung 44 on the Cowboys in Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium. Baltimore comes in and a good dose of Derrick Henry, Lamar. Uh, they got 28 points. It's 28-6, real quick. Dallas kind of rallied because Baltimore likes to let teams back in it. Baltimore is good at getting you down, but not knocking you out. So it was a combination of that, more so than the Cowboys rallying or showing signs of life. He has a final score 28-25. And it's like, oh man. But look, they were getting beat down. They kept running left down the Cowboys' throat. And that's what the Cowboys are going to continue to get until they figure out a way to stop it. Tomorrow at the Giants, you almost could pencil the Giants in for a win every year. But how can we pencil in anything based on what we've seen the past couple weeks? The Cowboys won their first game at Cleveland. Looked dominant. But that, to me, now is a testament to how bad Cleveland is. Deshaun Watson is it's not it. The Giants went to Cleveland and won. So again, and the Giants still they're not great, but they went into Cleveland, did the same thing Dallas did. So somebody's gonna get the 2-2 tomorrow. Don't know if it's the Cowboys, don't know if it's the Giants, but we shall see. Let's see, got a comment coming in before we wrap up. Oh, my girl Brandy Childers Romans. I've seen all the cakes that she does for UK. You saw her on Netflix. You've seen her on this podcast twice. And she said, this is off topic, but I have the ADHD. Just want to tell you that you look just like your daddy. Wow. Hugs, Fred. Love you too. And yeah, with this little fuzz that I got, how white it is, it's definitely just like Dad's. Now I'll hear myself say stuff and I'll catch myself sounding like him. So for sure, appreciate you putting the comment in there, Brandy. Hope you and Sean and the kids are doing well as well. So I'm doing my best. Thank you. And look, we're all proud of you, everything that you have continued to do and have done and continue to do. We can't thank you enough. It's so good to finally get to see you back at the grand opening at Portal 31 last year. That was awesome. And look, the cake you did for that, just one of the many great ones that you continue to do. So appreciate you. And appreciate everybody that took time to hop on here and check out this episode. Thanks to Evie Van Pelt. Get to talk some Ole Miss, get a little perspective on the Rebels. TB is heading back to Kentucky as we speak, but we'll be back next week. Hopefully talking about a win over Ole Miss. Getting closer to basketball too. We got Big Blue Madness, Blue White game coming up. All that is right around the corner. It's all going to be revamped. It's going to be new. So get to see the new look everything coming up here in a few weeks. So we'll be here to talk about that as well. So thanks again to Evie Van Pelt. My name is Vinny Hardy. It's been another episode of Cats Talk Wednesday. We'll see everybody a week from tonight. We'll do it all again. Appreciate y'all. See you later.
It's time for Cats